Hello, it's Sandra Pike from Page Atlantic and the Pike Group, and we have an interesting duo with me today. And today's topic is all about the Halifax market and where we are to date in 2023. However, before we continue, this lovely gentleman over here on my left, I will get him to introduce yourself.
So I assume that Sandra's talking. Is my mic on?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm assuming Sandra's talking about me because I might not be on her left on my screen. I'm John Kenny. I'm with Sutton Group Professional Realty. I've been in the real estate industry for 17 years and in the Halifax market. Started off working with Sandra way back when, best of friends, good co-workers, but I just happened to go to a different company, and here we are today back coming around.
Yep. And yourself, Roy, go ahead.
I'm Roy Thomas. I'm also with Sutton Group Professional Realty, been in since the 1990s. And yeah, all three of us at one point were together at a different company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here we are, the old crew, right?
That's right.
Seasoned.
So I want to just, I sent you some questions earlier. I'd like to go over the stats and, just maybe just ask you some questions in general. So typically, when I look at the stats, I only focus on single family homes. So I'm not looking at condos or I'm not looking at modular homes, just focusing on single family homes and, what's selling here in Halifax. And in addition to the price points, if there's any drops, I always look at the original price first, as opposed to the listing price. And then I look at the sold side. So I don't look at the price when it gets an offer. Just I want to know what's before. So right now, year to date here in Halifax, there have been 1,228 homes that sold. I mean, that's a big drop. If we were to look at in 2021, there were 2,600 homes sold. In 2022, there were 2,700 homes sold. But so our market is slower. We only have 1,228 homes. Out of the 1,228 homes, 620 of those are selling under ask. So John, I know you used to do a lot of business over in Cole Harbour and whatnot. What are you seeing right now in areas that you were selling? Because that stat of 50% selling under asking is not the same for everywhere.
Yeah, and so there's there's a lot of different things. It depends on when you're pulling your numbers, and your stats are absolutely right. But I've found in the first part of the year, especially January, February, March, we were seeing those price decreases. I think a lot of realtors are struggling with where to price things in their strategy. That's a big part. I see people still going on houses that are worth $450 for $375 and getting all the people to come in. And then you have other people, and I think sellers are kind of part of this responsibility, because we have to listen to our sellers. It's their house, and they're still looking at numbers from 2022 where it was much higher. And as a result, their expectations are, I'm going to list here, and the realtors are letting them try that higher number because they're still stuck in 2022 where we had our big up and down in our prices. So once they are coming to the realization that that number is not going to work, like a $599 on a $550 house or whatever, then they'll drop the prices. So I have been seeing it, not so much in the last month and a half, but especially over 500,000. I'm seeing the price drops over 500,000 a lot more than under, right?
So speaking of strategy, Roy, before the pandemic, I could meet you, Mr. Seller, and say, I'm going to sell your house for 97% of asking. During COVID, I'd go in and I'd say to a seller, okay, how much do you want for your house? Okay, 650. Okay, we're going to list around 475. And then now here we are in 2023, and it has been difficult to price houses. And, John, like you said, there are, prices coming down because sellers are seeing. But I had a conversation with an agent the other day, and, they said it's time to go back and price the way we did during the pandemic. Roy, what are your thoughts about that?
Last stat I saw is only 42% of homes are getting multiple offers and 50% are selling under asking. So it's you got to make a judgment call in every house. If you think you're going to get multiple offers, you can price a little low and let it escalate up through the bidding. But you also have to be putting on a price that you're willing to take if they don't get multiple offers. Because I
Yeah,
did
no,
two deals in Dartmouth last week that were close to each other. One was a buyer, one was a listing. The homes were close to each other. They were similar properties. The prices were the same. One had multiple offers and one didn't.
wow.
And the price was almost identical on the two properties.
John, back to what you were saying, you're seeing homes that are maybe above 500,000 dropping in price. Like there was one at 1.5 million that dropped to sold at 980. One at 2.5 million sold at 2.5, sold at 1.2 million. Like that's a big drop.
Well, that'll affect all our numbers, yeah.
Absolutely. There was a home at 649 selling for 485. And then there was a home at 499 selling for 355. So, I mean, was the home inspection really that bad that the price had to drop just to, cover the repairs? Or, was it because the seller had high expectations, and it was priced high? Like, what are your thoughts, John, in those cases that I just said?
Well, it sounds like it's probably a case of being priced high. I mean, like we really like as educated as we are and as much that we've done this business in the last 17, 20, whatever number of years, you just really don't know. When you get into a house that's truly unique, how do you price it when it's in the middle of, like, maybe it's on the water out in Peggy's Cove? You don't know. Everybody else has different homes. So the people are shooting high and seeing what happens. But I'm just afraid that people at 7 and 8% stress rates just aren't getting approved for those big houses the way they were. And also further to that, and this is going to steal from another question, but where the market's kind of crept up quite a bit, because you got to think about this time last year in March, we had interest rates, people were locked in for like 2.2% or whatever. Then they went up to like 5.5 in like the matter of a month and a half with a stress test at 7. And then we went all the way up here from $626,000 average sale price, all the way, it dropped all the way through the summer, all the way, and then back in the spring. And now we're right back to where we were last year on the average price. And so it's hard to imagine people can continue to pay the higher price. Sorry, I got a little off track on that one, but
That's okay. Roy, when you're, either the listing agent or the buyer agent, where are you seeing the buyers coming from with the deals that you've been involved with, year to date?
Most of my buyers, generally speaking, most of them are past clients, referrals for most of my buyers. So
they'd be local?
Yeah, most have been local. Buyers I just worked with, they're local, but they moved down from Ontario a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of mine are local.
And John, how about yourself?
yeah, so I keep that old spreadsheet we had from way back in Exit with that Wayne had. So I have every year I have all my numbers. So I went through quick the last 3 years this morning to look at my personal percentages. And I have a pretty good memory if I can remember if I was selling a house and the buyer was from somewhere else. So anyway, I was just looking. So 2021, it was about 18% of all the transactions I did had one person from another province involved. Last year on 2022, it went down to 12.5%. But again, this is just on my base of business. And this year, where we're early, we're really just out of the first quarter, a little bit past that. It's back up to 18%, but it's on a lower base of deals. But I'm not feeling the Ontario crowd and the Alberta crowd like we were last year and the year before, because you're sitting there with 15 or 20 offers, easily 50% of them were from out of the province. And I'm not seeing that blend. Who's successful in getting the house is one thing, but the amount of offers coming from out of province are less. And of course, the international buyers program where they've rejected that. I don't think there were a ton of residential sales in those where people were buying a house and not intending to move here, but that obviously has an effect on it as well, because that's where you're getting some big offers from and big numbers.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree. I would say the buyers that my team and I are working with, that we have a lot of military people who are moving here, the buyers, but there's not just like the buyers who are moving here because of COVID. I would say that pool has certainly almost dried up, and even the offers that I'm getting in, I'm seeing Halifax as the address for the buyer. Roy, what are your thoughts? I mean, like, our inventory is really, really low. You know, is it because, you know, people don't have anywhere to go? Is it because of the mortgage rates, or, you know, or maybe people just don't want to move? What are your thoughts about our inventory here?
Well, the bottom line is we're in a housing shortage. We just don't have enough housing for people. Halifax is growing by the equivalent of about Truro every year, 10,000 people. And we're not building that many homes every year. So we're in a shortage and we're going to stay there for a while. That creates problems. I mean, if you own a house and you want to sell and go somewhere, where do you go? It's not worthwhile for a lot of people to move, so they're not going to put their house on the market. So that's part of the reason why we're seeing the shortage. There just isn't enough homes, and people who own it are reluctant to sell unless they have unless they basically have to.
No, I would have to agree. John, what would be one of the biggest challenges that you're facing, you know, this year, within real estate, would you say?
Well, kind of adding on to what Roy was just saying, I find the biggest challenge or the biggest change, I think that was kind of the same idea that's been going on this year, is to Roy's point, I find a lot of the seniors or the people that are ready to downsize, not necessarily the same, it can also affect anybody, but they're not comfortable selling their house until they know where they're going. And that's a problem, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a condo, or whether it's a small house that fits enough to move into where they're going to save some equity. They don't exist. And they are, you know, they've worked their whole life, they've saved their money, they don't get pushed around. Like, you know what I mean? So they're trying to wait till they can get a better opportunity, but that is causing a shortage in the inventory, because, you know, every year you would have a number of people that are downsizing or moving, and their inventory comes up and it sells, and we have more, so the prices get a little lower because there's competition among the houses. So I think that's the biggest one. Also, the other one that's realistic is first-time home buyers. Where are they getting the cash? I sat down with a new homeowner, a new home buyer who's from out of the country. It's his first house, and you know what his question was to me? He goes, "Do people that aren't born in Canada, can they afford a house without a down payment from their parents?" Like, it was a pretty legitimate question from someone who had moved here, who doesn't have that support, because he's under the impression that parents are lending people money for the down payment because the cost of buying is getting so high. But that's not always the case, as we know, but it does happen, right?
Speaking of that, I had an interesting offer on my desk the other day, and I was speaking with it about it to Mike Caron from CUA. You know, a conventional type of purchase, like if you think, like, typically when the, you know, the normal, or the average deal that you would see coming across the desk is usually two people, a husband and wife, or, you know, same-sex couple or whatever, buying a house. But the deal that was on my desk the other day were three friends purchasing a house so they can live in it, and as opposed to paying rent. They have, you know, they're building their equity. So,
Yep.
you know, when they do decide to move on, you know, they can either, you know, buy each other out or sell the house and split the funds. So, you know, are you talking to your clients about that? Friends getting together and buying a house?
That is exactly the last two people I met with, including this gentleman that was from out of the country. That's exactly what I said to him. I said, you don't need a parent, you need a friend, a good friend, and someone that's really vetted. That's really important, because you don't want to buy a house, because it's a big commitment if you're buying a house with someone that's not going to amicably separate and sell the house in 3 or 4 years, right? You don't want to get caught up in that. But yeah, I think it's something that we heard before in the past on investment properties. I've seen a couple of realtors over time pooling together people that wanted to buy, like 5 or 6, buying a place, renovating it, and then letting it go a couple years later. So I think that's a great idea. And I think that, you know, people should start looking at that, because short term, if you're single, you don't have kids, and or maybe you're just married one person, but it's a way to get into the house. Because if you're not in the market, we all know this, if you don't own a house, your price of your buying a house has been going up like 50 grand a year for the last 2 or 3 years. If you own anything, that was moving with the price increases, so your equity was kind of somewhat protected.
Roy, if you had to give a seller advice today, you were getting ready to list your house, list their house, what would you give? What would you tell them?
You know, it honestly depends on their individual area, and you have to, as I said, you have to look at the house, look at the area, make a judgment call, as to what sort of activity I think you're going to get on that one, because you know, we're seeing agents put a house on the market with a deadline of 4 days for an offer and then not getting them in 4 days. You don't want to get caught that way. I talked to an agent today and he had a deadline, and complicated story, but he didn't get the house sold at the deadline. So you got to make a judgment call. Generally speaking, you're probably going to, if your house is in a good area, in good condition, and you got it priced right, you're going to get a lot of activity and will probably get multiple offers and go over, but there's no guarantees. So you really got to be pricing it accurately. And it is a bit of a guessing game at this point, because you just don't fully know the amount of activity you're going to get on that property.
No, and you don't know. And I didn't put this in your notes, John, but anyway, it pisses me off when I see a property that if I want to send an offer, they need 48 hours to look at it. Why do you need 40? I get it if you're out of town, but most of the stuff, and if the property's been on the market for 2 weeks, why do you need 48 hours? Like, I don't understand that. Like, that to me makes no sense, unless, again, it's a estate sale, you got to consult the family, but not 30 or 40% of the houses that are out there, you know, need 48 hours to address an offer. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to confusion, because we have a lot of people in the industry that are leaders, they'll follow a certain strategy, and there's other ones that are followers, and then there's also just look and try to figure out what works best in the situation as well, right? I understand where they're coming from with the 24, 48, 72 hours, because they're afraid to do what Roy just mentioned. They're concerned about saying, we're going to list on Wednesday and all offers are due on Sunday, because they might not get the offer. So instead of doing that, by putting that 48-hour timeline in, it's giving them an opportunity to drum up some other offers once they get one in, because their timeline is going to start when the first offer comes. They don't need that time to present clearly, but they just want to get in a competing situation, which is best for their client as a seller. If you represent the seller, that's what they want to do. So I would say that's why they're doing it. I have been doing that, but now that I've seen what's been going on with offers, because I've seen the offers go from one house 3 weeks ago was 7 offers to the next weekend 13 to 20, depending on the house, right? But so now we're getting up in the teens again on many of these house offers if they're priced right. So so people are starting to switch to that. I'm listing Wednesday, offers due Monday again, because they have that confidence. But when they didn't have it, I think that's where you're getting those shorter windows, because at least it gives them something so they can go and try to approach all the previous people who viewed the house.
Yeah, I agree with John 100%. That's why we're doing it.
Awesome.
It gives you got a chance to call the agents back who looked at it, and you got 48 hours more to put showings on. So it's definitely an attempt to get multiple offers.
For me, why I found it frustrating was that we were dealing with so many military members who were coming for house hunting trips, and you know, they had to wait 48 hours to see if they got the property or not. And so I think
don't have to wait.
Pardon?
You don't have to wait the 48 hours. You can give them a shorter deadline on the offer. It's up to the seller to decide whether or not they want to respond.
I understand that, but some agents wouldn't accept that. So for me, I found that frustrating for our military members who are moving here. But you know, if put it on, do what we did last year, right? You put it on, you know, my homes are listed on Friday or Thursdays. I take offers on Monday. Yes, I'll look at bully offers. So, I mean, that was a big thing, you know, third and fourth quarter last year that, you know, initially we wouldn't accept preemptive bully offers. And then we thought, well, you know, the market's slowing down, your offer is good, bring it on in, as opposed to, you know, I've sold 19 homes since January, and not one of my homes had 48 hours. Did I switch gears when Friday, when I saw how busy a listing was? I called Mr. Seller. Hey, just so you know, we're really busy. I think we should switch it and have your offers due Monday. What are your thoughts? And I would then, you know, proceed to follow my my seller's advice at that point, or instructions of what they wanted to do. I didn't see the point of the 48 hours. Just Anyway.
It's frustrating, Sandra. There's no doubt about it. When
Yeah.
you're up against the timeline, and I mean, the only thing you can say is that, well, if another house comes up, we might withdraw our offer and write on it. Like that's the only thing you have if the agent don't change it. But like I said, everybody's doing something different, and you just gotta kind of find how you're going to fit best into that situation when it comes to these timelines.
Well, guys, I really want to thank you for your time. And, you know, Roy, you've been with me a couple of times, and John, I mean, you and I go way back. You know, I'd love to have you probably on again with us.
Love to have you. Love to be there. Thanks, Roy.
Awesome.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Sandra.
All the great minds at work.
Thank you.
See you later, guys.